Hey guys, welcome back to This Old Outboard. In this video, I'm going to show you how to rebuild the carburetor on a 1956 Evinrude Fastwin Outboard Motor. This instruction set is also applicable to the other 15 horsepower motors and 18 horsepower motors. But before we get to the details of rebuilding the carburetor, I want to show you the finished job and the motor cranking up and it working, so you know that this video is worth your time. First thing we're going to do is hook up the water to the lower unit using this flush plate device that I've designed and I sell on my eBay store. You can see here that I make a flush plate that bolts into the water intake on the lower unit gear case, and then I have this garden hose adapter, so you don't have to submerge your lower unit in a garbage can full of water anymore. You just hook up the garden hose, turn it on, and you're ready to go. Alright, so we got the water turned on. You're going to see a lot of water spitting out the sides. Don't worry about that. It doesn't matter. It'll still pick up water and you'll see it coming out the exhaust here. There you have it. I'm going to be going through a step-by-step instruction on how to rebuild these carburetors, and you can know that it works once you get done. Also check out my website. It'll be on the bottom of the video screen, thisoldoutboard.com. Make sure to check the video description for any links to carburetor rebuild kits, flush plates, bypass cover, fuel pump conversion plates are also sold on my eBay store. And make sure to hit that subscribe button if this video helped you out, and hit that little notification bell symbol so that you get notified every time I upload a new how-to video. Thanks for watching. Let's get started. Carburetor is attached to the power head through a couple of bolts. One here, one here. You have a fuel line fitting here. And then you have a linkage. The first step is removing the linkages and the fuel line. With the linkage and the fuel line removed, now you can take a 1/2-inch wrench and start to unscrew these bolts here and prep for removing the carburetor body from the power head. And it should come right off. You want to stuff this with a paper towel. Don't stuff it down in there very far, but just put something in there to keep debris from getting inside the reed valves. After we get it off the power head, we're going to want to kind of clean it up, get all the grime and oil and residue off of it before we disassemble it. You can use carburetor parts cleaner, or you can use brake parts cleaner, or just gas and a toothbrush, whatever you have laying around. One thing that I highly recommend that you get is a C-Lock repair manual. I'm going to be going through all the steps in this manual. They're a pretty generic manual, so they're not very specific per se to your horsepower, but they're really informative and they just they help you along with YouTube. So on this style carburetor, you're gonna have the low speed needle, which is the needle at the top, and the high speed needle, which is the needle at the bottom. These are the sleeves, the needle sleeves, and you can remove them using a 7/16 inch wrench. That's going to be the first thing that you do. Once you have the sleeves removed, you can remove the needles by unscrewing them counterclockwise like this. Inside of here is going to be some packing washers. You can take a pick or a very small screwdriver and remove those. These are very important to remember and replace because the packing washers are what seat the needle and cause them to stay in their proper position whenever the engine's vibrating. If you don't have these in, then the needle will want to back out and mess up the tune of your carburetor, and your motor won't run well at all. We're going to end up blowing all this out, so it's not absolutely critical, but as least or as little junk we can get back in that jet area as possible, the better. Once you have all your plastic and felt packing washers removed and all that cleaned up the best you can, the next thing we're going to do is remove this welch plug. And you can see I've drilled a hole in this this very soft metal cap, and I drilled that hole because then I can take a pick and I can start to pry it out like such. And all this welch plug is, and you get a new one in the carburetor kit that I'm going to show you when we put all this back together. So you get a new one of these and you just place it on here, and the new one is nice and round, and you just tap it back down in there and it expands along its circumference and gives a nice seal. But what this welch plug is protecting is the jet orifice here from the high-speed needle. So the high-speed needle has a very sharp point, and it comes into a conical shape interface back inside of here, and if you back out the needle or if you insert the needle, it controls the flow of fuel through the jet. So since we boogered up, or in my case the packing nut material didn't come out very cleanly and it broke up, there's a lot of debris in there, so you want to make sure you remove the welch plug and you clean out in here, spray it out, or hit it with some compressed air and make sure you get all that debris out as you rebuild it. Next, we're going to remove this glass float bowl. This glass float bowl is on the very early model carburetors that had the pressurized fuel tank. Since we're going to convert this to a fuel pump, and we can use the newer plastic fuel tanks that you get at Walmart or Academy or at other places. You don't necessarily need to have this on here However, some people take it off and build a way to bypass it. However, it doesn't hurt anything just keeping it on here. So, but we're going to take it off and we're going to clean it. To take it off, you back off this nut here. It's going to release this clamping mechanism here, and you can then remove the bowl. There's a gasket down there that has the bowl, so you may have to take a little pressure, but hopefully not too much where you break it. There it is, removed. Next, take a flathead screwdriver, remove this. Remember how that went on? It went on with the concave side facing the camera. With that off, we can now remove these 5 flathead screws here and remove the bowl, or the lower half of the carburetor body. Alright, so this is skipping ahead to the future a little bit. One thing I forgot to do on the bottom half of the carburetor body was remove this filter. All you have to do is, once you get the bowl off, you just pick it up and slide it out. There's also this rubber gasket around it that I would recommend not picking at like I did, because they're about 12 bucks on eBay if you crack it and chip it like I did. I would try to get away with reusing it, but I had a bunch of garbage down in here that I needed to clean out. So you're going to want to remove this filter and clean out at least down in there. Try to reuse the gasket, but yeah. Go ahead and carefully peel the gasket off. Put that aside. Using your pick, you can press in through one side here of this hinge, remove this piece, and lift up on the float, and you should also with it remove the float needle valve right there. Place that to the side. With a large screwdriver, remove the float needle valve orifice here, and with it should come a plastic gasket that you're going to want to replace. Then remove the center nozzle. The carburetor is now completely disassembled. Now what we're going to want to do from here is really take our time and clean everything very thoroughly. Hey guys, so I got everything cleaned off really well. I've got all the debris cleaned off the body of the carburetor. I took some compressed air and I blew out all the passages. Used a wire brush and I got the mating or faying surfaces really nice and clean. Got all the old gasket material off of both sides of the carburetor. Cleaned the inside really well. Cleaned in here the best I can. There's a little bit of corrosion, but I think it's kind of permanent pitting on the inside here. I also cleaned the fuel filter that goes in the bowl here really well. Blew all that out. I'm still waiting on the gasket to come in the mail, but I also cleaned up the bowl really nicely here, and we're ready to start putting the carburetor back together. This is the Sierra carb kit. It's part number 18-7043. If you expand the video description below, you can find a link to this carb kit on Amazon or eBay. You'll notice that this kit does not have the float. If you need a kit with the float, you can barely see it in here. If you need the float, you'll need a different part kit, and I'll leave the link in the video description as well. It's all the same parts, it's just one comes with a float, one does not. In the kit, you'll find a new bowl needle, the clip, and the brass fitting. You'll find a new float, a new gasket. You'll find various different carb to power head gaskets, and the reason for this is this kit fits more than just 1 horsepower and model year, so this is kind of a one-size-fits-all kit for this style of carburetor. So you'll have a few extra gaskets, and that's to be expected. Then you'll find a bunch of different washers and gaskets here. You'll find some new welch plugs. This one will go right here, and you can see that this one is a little too small. That's because this is a one-size-fits-all kit, but if you take the other one, it fits just right. So whenever you have an extra welch plug, keep that in mind. Here you have a few plastic washers. This is what's going to go over your brass fitting here. Make sure not to lose those because they are white. And then you'll have a few extra packing washers here as well. First thing I like to do is reinstall the welch plug after I'm pretty confident that I've got all the passages cleaned out. So all you need to do is find the proper diameter welch plug, place it into position. I use a socket extension. So you can see kind of flatten the top, and that expands that diameter and produces a really good seal along the perimeter. Next we'll start reinstalling the float and the needle and the seat. To do this, you'll need to open up your little bag here. Make sure you don't lose this clip and the needle. Put that aside for the moment. Once you have your seat body picked out, there's a large plastic clear washer in the kit. Make sure to put that washer on this valve seat body and install it into the upper housing. Next, take your needle and install the clip on the head like such. Take your float, install the clip and needle assembly like this, and then lower the needle into the seat body. Take the pin in the kit and slide it through the float bowl tab here. So when it's all said and done, it should look like this. When you rotate the body to the side and you lift up the float, the clip should be attached to the float tab, and it should raise and lower the needle valve. That's important that this acts as an assembly. Make sure that that clip is attached to the needle. Now, for the final adjustment of the float, whenever the carb is sitting like this, flat towards the ground, the plane of this float here should be parallel to the plane of this interface, of this surface right here. So how you adjust that is you rotate it to the side and you look down with your eye and you bend this tab until this carburetor plane here, the top face of the float, is parallel to the plane of the carburetor half interface here. So I'm going to do that right now. So as it stands, it looks pretty good. Next, we're going to reinstall the center pickup tube. Don't forget to reinstall this gasket here. Very important. Next, we're going to install the main body gasket right here. Once you have the gasket roughly in place, you can So this is interesting. Whenever I try to install the lower half, it ends up being that this pin that came in the kit interferes and hits the sides. So I've run into this before, so what I usually do is just remove this pin and use the old one that we know worked. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to carefully reinstall the old pin. I'm going to take this gasket off, get it out of my way. You can see that this old pin sits flush. Let's check, make sure that, yeah, oh, and it even falls out. Alright, so with the old pin put on, I'm going to place the gasket back over, get it roughly into position, and then place the bottom half of the carb bowl back on. So when you put it all together, you're going to get some resistance, like it doesn't want to sit flush. And the reason for that is this new gasket needs to be compressed. So don't be alarmed, but this gasket here in the center, gasket washer, whatever you want to call it, is thick and it needs to be compressed, which is okay because we want a tight seal right there. So next, you just holding it in place, you want to get the fasteners started that hold the carb bowl together. Once you get them all started, you can draw in the lower carb body by tightening them. I wouldn't tighten them all the way at first. I would tighten them fairly decently and going in a star or a crosswise pattern like you would a tire. And there you go. Final step, just make sure that there aren't any major gaps that are visible. Everything looks even and flush and no gaps. Everything looks pretty good here. Next, we're going to start putting the needle valves back in. This is the high-speed needle valve, and this over here smaller diameter one is the low speed needle valve. What's important to remember on this is that you get the packing nut. You don't forget your packing nuts, which are these cork washers here. So once you have your packing nuts, you're going to kind of gently push them in this way. Stack 2 of them and gently push them in. Okay. Take this and screw it in until you get it hand tight. Take your slow speed or low speed needle, push it through the packing nuts there, and start to screw it in. Once you can feel that it's started, you can tighten down this piece. Once you feel it seat, like I said, don't put a lot of torque on it, but back it off 1.5 turns. So mark with your eye or put a Sharpie mark or somewhere on here so that you don't lose your spot. I can mark it with my thumb, so that's 1 turn, and then there's a 1/2 turn. Once you back it off 1.5 turns, you can go ahead and seat this. This is the initial setting for your carburetor. Okay, once it seats, don't over torque it. Once you feel it seat, back this off 3/4 of a turn. Then tighten this down, and then tighten this down. My new gasket came in the mail, so we're gonna place the gasket in place. Cleaned out the filter. This is like a porous metallic cylinder, so I soaked it in gas and then I used compressed air to blow it out. Cleaned it out really well, and then we're gonna place everything back together. So you can see this is not perfectly flat, it's concave. So place it concave side up, and then we just install the screw. Once we have that, we can install the bowl. So cleaned out the bowl really well. And then we unscrew this. And then just screw it down till it's nice and tight. Don't over tighten it, for sure. And there you have it. Everything is back together. Now all we have to do is take this and put it back on the power head. In the kit will be a gasket of similar size, so make sure you find the right gasket and place it on the power head. Next, place the carburetor over the 2 screws here, and you're not going to be able to push it all the way back for reasons you'll probably find out, but just, sorry if the camera's shaking, but just get the carburetor loosely on and get each one of the nuts started. If you push the carburetor all the way on the very beginning, then the studs will protrude too far and there won't be a big enough gap in order to get the nuts started, as you see here. So you can see here that if you push the carburetor body all the way back, you're not going to be able to get that nut in there on either side. So you have to pull it out a little bit like this, get the nuts started, then once you get them started you can tighten them back down. Another thing that helps is if you pull the choke out, you can see you can get a little more room right in there. So the last thing to do is to connect the fly valve here. And what we'll need to do is get some wire, and there's a hole on here, and we can just tie a little knot in the wire to keep it from sliding out. But now all we have to do is fire it up, test it out, do a little bit of tune-up, what we can do here on the stand, and then put it on the boat and go out and do the final tune-up.